Annie holds a BA in advertising and graphic design, creative, from the Columbus College of Art and Design, and a master's in communication management from Towson University. Woo, is that Tigers? Go Tigers? Sorry. Winston didn't like that one. She's also taught as an adjunct communications professor. Annie lives with her husband and daughter in Northeast Baltimore. Yeah, shout out Northeast. She enjoys distance running, gardening, and channeling her excess creative energy into interior design projects. Creative Mornings Baltimore, please help me welcome Annie Milli to the stage.
He got my first slide. Hi, everybody. Oh, thank you so much for being here. I am so glad to spend my morning with you. Honestly, I was so excited when Mario and Kira reached out and asked me to do this because, truthfully, I have been waiting for years for an appropriate place to wear this outfit.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, my God. I'm usually speaking to business people, so thank you guys so much for being creative people and for letting me be myself this morning. So that's great.
Yeah.
But seriously, when they asked me if I would be willing to speak on the topic of perspective, I thought that was so perfect because I am a marketer, and so I am in the perspectives business. It is my job to shape and influence the perspectives of other people. And even more than that, the product that I am currently responsible for marketing, the City of Baltimore, is a product that really it elicits a lot of very diverse perspectives. Depending on one's perspective, Baltimore is either the greatest city in America, or if you're our friends at Fox 45, boo. It is a city in crisis. And this contrast is so stark that it is no wonder that people who are considering moving here for school or for a job or just for any other reason, they have questions and they're maybe confused about what they're going to experience when they get here. And it's also no wonder that Live Baltimore's work is so very important. Perspectives are shaped by two things. Our stories and experiences. The stories that we hear and the experiences that we have, they shape our perspectives. At Live Baltimore, we tell stories and we create experiences that shape the perspectives of hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, every single year. And so hearing that, you might rightfully think to yourself, like, okay, well, like, who is this middle-aged white lady in this ridiculous outfit? And, like, what right does she have to impose her perspective of Baltimore City onto all of us? And to you, I would say, totally fair. That's totally fair. I definitely have a perspective on the city. My family has been here for 4 generations. I really just wanted to show a picture of my grandmother. So that's my grandmother there in that beautiful white dress in the middle. And she's standing next to Annie Todd. That is the woman that I am named after. And that is Annie's house, the house that my grandmother grew up in. And the stories that I heard about her growing up in this house are some of what really shaped my perspective from a very early age. So I definitely have a perspective on Baltimore City, but thankfully, that does not matter at all. My perspective does not matter. And that is for a number of reasons. But really, it's because it's not my perspective that we're sharing at Live Baltimore. We're not sharing my perspective because of our culture that we have at Live Baltimore, because of our core values to love Baltimore, but really we're not sharing my perspective primarily because of one thing that we do, and that thing is something very special called Final Friday. So Final Friday is a staff professional development opportunity. It is the way that we train ourselves on Baltimore City's neighborhoods. Baltimore City has 279 neighborhoods, by the way, if you did not know. It's a lot of neighborhoods. And there are currently 11 of us. We've been a much smaller staff in the past. But it's hard to know about all of these neighborhoods. So we do this thing called Final Friday. And as its name suggests, it typically takes place on the last Friday of the month.
Like Creative Mornings.
Like Creative Mornings. Yes. We actually had our Final Friday yesterday. So, but it typically takes place on the final Friday of the month. And what it is an opportunity for us to invite ourselves over to somebody's house. We reach out to a neighbor and we say, hey, would you mind hosting 11 Live Baltimore staff people and inviting as many of your neighbors as possible to your house so that Live Baltimore can listen to you all tell stories about your community. And people do this, you guys. They welcome us into their house. It's amazing. Usually when we have these events, we bring breakfast, but on some very special occasions, residents cook for us. This picture behind me, this is a Final Friday that took place in Coldstream Homestead, Montebello. And you guys, there were 4 kinds of breakfast meats. It was crazy. I'm looking at Chadrace in the front row because she remembers. It was like pancakes and eggs and 4 different kinds of breakfast meats. It was amazing. And so after we talk as we eat, and after we hear from residents, we go out and we ask neighbors to take us on a walk. We ask them to walk us around and to show us their community. And it's an incredibly simple format, but it is really, really critical to the work that we do. This tradition has been going on since before I arrived at Live Baltimore, and I have been at Live Baltimore for 10 years, which is crazy. I'm not old enough to have worked anywhere for 10 years. I've been there for 10 years, and so I have been to dozens of these events. We unfortunately had to pause the events during the pandemic, but we're back at it, and we do our best to get out and to do this at least 10 months out of the year. It's always people's favorite day of the month. It's always my favorite day of the month. It has given me the opportunity to fall in love with people and places probably that most of you have never heard of. It's the reason that I know that Hunting Ridge is my favorite city neighborhood that I do not live in. It's the reason that I know that if you're a baseball fan, and frankly, who's not a baseball fan after yesterday's opening day performance? It's the reason that I know that if you're a baseball fan, you should live in Ridgely's Delight, because those people, they have season tickets as a neighborhood, and they all walk together and sit together at the game. What an amazing thing. It's also the reason that I am totally just enamored with the Cherry Hill community and currently doing everything in my power to bring as many resources as possible to that neighborhood. But of all of the Final Fridays that I have ever been on, and of all of the residents who have ever shared their perspective and influenced mine, none stand out more than this resident. This is Miss Adeline Hutchinson of the Mondawmin community. And Miss Adeline has been a resident of the Mondawmin community for decades. She has been a community leader there. She is an absolute hero of mine, and she agreed to be our host in July of 2019. So there's actually a couple other things I should say about Final Friday. It's not just an opportunity for us to eat breakfast and to hear from residents. The way that we convince people to invite us into their homes is we say, we're going to come, we're going to learn about your community, and then we're going to ask you to take us on this walk. And when we take the walk, we're going to be taking photos, and we're going to be recording video, and we're going to be listening to your stories and recording those or writing those down. And afterwards, we're going to create a lot of marketing materials that we can use to promote your community. So we're going to be taking a lot of pictures and putting them on social media, and it's going to be this great thing. And so that's really why people, I think, agree to do this. So that's important to know. And so this is the building where where Miss Adeline chose to host us in July of 2019. And I don't know what I expected when I asked our team to plan a Final Friday in Mondawmin. Maybe I thought like we would be near the mall, but that's not where we ended up. We ended up here. And as I arrived at the location, which is a very beautiful building, I remember thinking to myself like, okay, this is going to be a little bit of a different Final Friday. This Final Friday might be a little bit of a photography challenge. And the reason that I remember thinking that is because although this building is very beautiful and although this mural is very beautiful, everything surrounding this building is vacant. So across the street, 99% of the properties are vacant. To the left and to the right, there's vacant businesses. And so even though it's near Coppin State University, there's a lot of distress around this building. So I have that thought in my mind, like this might be a little bit of a photography challenge, but we go inside, and Miss Adeline has assembled a wonderful group of residents. I don't know if you can tell from the photo, but most of these are older adults. So these are all folks who have been living in the Mondawmin community for decades. They've been leaders in their community for decades, and they have great stories to share. And so we sit with them, and we have some breakfast, yes, and we hear from them stories about their community. So I don't know if it's like because they're older adults, or maybe it's because they had like looked at the weather that day and they're smarter than we are. But when we said that it was time for us to leave our conversation breakfast portion of the event and go for a walk, like one by one, these residents said like, oh, we aren't taking the walk. We're not going on the walk with you guys. And so we realized, okay, well, it's just gonna be us and Adeline. And I mentioned the weather because this was it was July, and it was probably like the hottest day of July. It was like 98 degrees outside, you guys. So when the other residents said that they weren't going to come with us, we said to Adeline like, hey, just don't feel too much pressure. If you don't want to walk us around for too long, that's totally fine. We can just see a couple things and then get out of your way. But she said, no, I don't care I'm not bothered by the sun. I'm not bothered by the heat. I have a great tour planned for you. I'm going to take you on this tour. And so off we go. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you photos from that day, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we heard from Miss Adeline, and I'm also going to tell you a little bit about what we saw. And hopefully that'll recreate this experience for you guys. So I hope that works. So the first thing that we were going to go see after we left this community center is we were going to go see houses. And so Mondawmin is primarily a residential community, and so we're walking through streets and we're looking at row houses, and Miss Adeline is very excitedly telling us about the beautiful and stately row homes in the Mondawmin community. She's talking about how they are so well built and how they are of the daylight style, and they let so much light into the homes, and how they are just a wonderful place to live and to raise a family. And that is true, and you can see that from these photos. That is absolutely true. What you don't see in these photos is something that you typically see in our photos when we do a Final Friday, and that's typically when we're taking pictures, we're getting these sweeping pictures of the whole block. So looking down a street and showing pictures of a whole block. But when you look through the album from this particular event, you notice that every single photo is taken very close up, like this one. And the reason for that is that there was hardly a block that we passed where there wasn't some vacant home, or there wasn't some home that was in need of significant disrepair, or it was in significant disrepair, in need of repair. But so we're noticing that, but we're taking photos, and we're hearing from Miss Adeline about how wonderful and beautiful the houses are. Miss Adeline then wanted to show us some of the businesses in the neighborhood. She wanted to talk to us about the amenities that the community had. And so she took us to this dry cleaner. She wanted to introduce us to the man who had owned this dry cleaner. He'd been there for generations. And he came outside, and he came to talk to us. And they were clearly old friends. You can see the two of them. They have had a great relationship. And he came out, and we stood on the corner, and he began to tell us stories about what it was like to have a business in the neighborhood. And I might have mentioned it was 98 degrees. And we were standing on this corner, and I remember that, like, this was the first time I think we all started to really notice, like, there are no trees in this community. Like, we are just straight up in the sun, and we've been in the sun for a really long time now, and it's really hot, and there's no trees, and like we're standing here, and we are loving hearing everything that this gentleman has to share, but like it's getting hot out there. And I remember that, and I also remember that this was the only business that we visited that morning, and that was because although this business had been there for a long time, there were not other businesses along the commercial corridor. This was the business that was still open, and this was one of the only amenities that the neighborhood had. So we leave that sort of commercial strip, and Miss Adeline says that she wants to take us to see some of the artwork in the community. She's really excited to show us the artwork. She's telling us that residents have applied for all of these grants, and they've brought all of these murals to the neighborhood. And she's telling us that the residents of Mondawmin they are passionate about the arts. And so she starts to walk us to these murals, and to get to these murals, we have to start sort of like leaving the residential streets, and we're starting to walk through the alleys. And this is when I think we all realized like that it was trash day, and that the trash hadn't been picked up yet. And so again, I'm just like painting a picture for you. It's 98 degrees. We're walking in the sunlight. There's no trees, and it's trash day, and the trash hasn't been picked up yet. And so it's an experience doing that that day. And so we're walking, and we're going to see these murals. And so we go to a variety of murals, two of which you see behind me, and they are beautiful. They are absolutely beautiful, and she's so proud of how the neighborhood have brought them to the community. But like the houses that I showed you earlier, you might notice that like these pictures are like pretty closely cropped. And the reason for that is that the reason that they have these murals is because these are vacant lots. And so they've applied to have art brought into vacant lots. And the vacant lots, they sort of attract illegal dumping. So there's a lot of illegal dumping, and there's a lot of trash that's blown in. And I remember, like, I had to take some of these photos because our communications manager had left for the day. And so underneath of that mosaic, I remember it being really difficult to take a photo and to crop out the trash that we saw there. But we continued on. From the murals, she said, I want to show you someplace where there's even more art in the community and where it's even more beautiful. And she takes us to this community pocket park, which you see behind me. It's called A Quiet Place. And she tells us that the neighborhood has they have written grants to create this space that is lovingly maintained by the neighbors, and that it's just this really wonderful place for the community to come. And it was beautiful. It was lovingly maintained, and it had trees, you guys. So we were like so excited to be in some shade for a little while. But it was, of course, it was still 98 degrees, and to get there, we still had to walk through alleys, and we were still reminded that it was trash day. And what you don't see in these pictures is the other thing that we noticed is that on the back side of this pocket park, there were a lot of vacant houses, and some of those houses were starting to fall down. And what I remember vividly is that there was a house on the corner in particular, like right on the edge of the park. And its structure seemed so compromised that I wrote down the address so that when I got back to the office, I could call the housing department and put in a request for an emergency demolition inspection because I was that worried that one of the houses was going to fall on somebody who was enjoying this park. And I might have mentioned it. It was 98 degrees. I might have mentioned that it was trash day and that there were no trees and that we had been in the sun. And you can't tell from the small number of photos that I've shown you, but like we had been walking for a very long time. Usually our Final Friday walks are like no longer than an hour. But Miss Adeline, if you ever get the chance to meet her, you will immediately realize she has boundless energy. She is undeterred, and she had a lot to show us. And so we had been walking for, you got like 2 hours, you guys, 2 hours in the sun. And we had not brought water. I don't know why we didn't bring water, but we had not brought water. And we were starting to fade. And we were starting to do the thing where we were like, we've really loved visiting with you. We really have had a great time today. We shouldn't take up any more of your time. But Miss Adeline said that we had to see this community orchard, that there was an orchard in the community. And we were like, an orchard in this community? How fantastic. And we had to see the community orchard. It was a community orchard that had been planted by the neighbors. They had written grants to do this. It was this really cool place where the neighbors could come and they could get free fruit. They could pick fruit. And there were a variety of different kinds of trees. And the trees would bear fruit at different times of the year. And it was like this amazing community amenity. And so despite not having water and being tired and it being trash day, we were like, okay, we're going to go to this community orchard. We'll make this our last thing that we do. So she walks us to the orchard, and in order to get to the orchard, I remember that more than probably any other part in this walk, we had to walk through these alleys. And again, it was trash day, and there was a lot of people's cans out in the alleys, but there was also a notable amount of illegal dumping. So people had been dumping in these alleys, and I remember like vividly Miss Adeline just talking about the orchard and walking and stepping over trash in the alley. And, we're all sort of like happily following along, but it was trash day and it was 98 degrees and it was like quite an experience out there. So anyway, we get to the orchard. And the orchard is lovely. There are a variety of trees, but like the murals, the orchard is in a vacant lot, and there's a significant amount of trash in the alleys surrounding it, and also I remember that the fruit from the trees had begun to fall. So if you can imagine, it's the summer in Baltimore, and we're in a lot, and it's full of trash, and there's fruit that's fallen onto the ground, and the fruit is covered with flies. And it was really intense. It was really intense. And as we are standing there, there's this woman, and she's telling us about what an amazing community asset this is. And we're hot, and we're tired, and we're smiling, and we're listening. And I can tell that our team is like really ready to go at this point. Like we're really ready to go. And so we say again, like, okay, thank you so much, Miss Adeline. You've shown us so many wonderful things. We're going to have to take off now. And she says, oh, no, but wait, you can't go yet. You haven't seen my block. And so, I'm like looking at the team, and I can tell the team is done. The team is done. And so I say to her, okay, you know what? How about this? We've been out here for more than 2 hours. The team has to get back to the office and do some work. I'm going to let them go. And I will come with you. I will come with you back to your house to see your block. And so the team leaves, and I carry on with her, and we go to her block, which, again, is quite far away. It's a large neighborhood. And when we get to her block, she's very excited to show me this state-of-the-art baseball field that's being constructed like right across the street from her house. This is the Brooks Robinson Field at Frederick Douglass High School, and it was built by the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation, and it was about to have its grand opening, and she was like so excited about that. She also showed me these lampposts in the front yards of her block, and the lampposts had been put there by a Healthy Neighborhoods grant. Maybe you've heard of Healthy Neighborhoods. They do like block projects. And so there were these beautiful lampposts, and she was telling me about what a lovely place it was to live and how great her neighbors were. And it was a really beautiful block. But you guys, I'm not perfect. And I was really hot. I was really hot, and I was really, really, really dehydrated. And I am really grumpy when I'm dehydrated. And I was trying to get out of there at this point. Like, I was like, I gotta go. And so I tell Miss Adeline that I'm gonna leave, and that I thank her for everything that she's shown me. And I tell her that I gotta go, and she's finally gonna let me go. Like, she's finally gonna let me go. And she says to me, "Okay, all right, you gotta go. But did you see everything that you needed to see?" And I say, "Yes, Miss Adeline. We saw everything that we needed to see." And she said, "Well, did you get all the pictures that you needed to get?" And I said, "Yes, Miss Adeline. We got all of the pictures that we needed to get." And she said, "Okay, and do you understand Mondawmin now?" And I said, Yes, Miss Adeline, we understand Mondawmin now." And she said, "Good." Sorry, I'm a crier. She said, "Good." And then she did something that I will never forget for the rest of my life. She took my hand, and she sort of like pointed around, and she said, "Good, because I just believe that someone would want all of this." And at that point, I felt like really bad for trying to leave so hard. I felt really guilty for trying to leave. But I held her hand, and I said, "I understand, Miss Adeline, and I promise that we will make sure that someone will want this." Hold on. So, is Baltimore the greatest city in America, or is it just a city in crisis? Is this a beautiful community orchard, or is it a vacant lot full of rotting fruit? I guess that depends on your perspective. As professional Baltimore boosters, we get criticized sometimes for wearing rose-colored glasses, or for being out of touch, or for not really understanding what's going on in our communities. But I don't think that's true. I think that what we do is we keep our promise to residents like Miss Adeline, which is to share their perspective, and to share that perspective with the world. So as long as I am the director of Live Baltimore, I will ensure that our staff continues to center residents' perspectives in all that we do. And I will continue to instill in them the responsibility that they have to all of our residents. But I would say today that responsibility is not just ours. That responsibility is all of yours as well. I would ask you today to consider adopting the perspective of Miss Adeline, and to think intentionally and hard about the stories that you tell and the experiences that you craft for others. Because truly, you are influencing so many people's perspectives with what you do and what you say. And it really, truly matters. Okay, now you can clap.
Yeah!
That's my talk.
So good. We're short on time, but let's take some questions. Does anyone have any questions? If you have a question, you got to raise it real high because I'm blind. I need jazz hands. You got to want it. Yeah. Who's out there? Anybody got any questions? All right, there we go. We'll start right here.
Hi, I'm just curious what other neighborhoods are on your docket in the year to come for 2024?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, I know the next place that we're going to go to Allendale. So Allendale is in southwest Baltimore, and I have been to that community, but I've never walked that community. I've never had breakfast in anybody's home. So I'm really excited to do that. That community is one of the neighborhoods that is eligible for our Buy Back the Block grants, which are these grants for renters who are living in the community who want to buy houses there. So we're excited to get out and to do that. And I would say we're always looking for Final Friday destinations. So my call to action is not just, adopt a optimistic perspective and think about how you shape others. But if you want to host us for a Final Friday, we'd be happy to invite ourselves into your living room.
Okay, I wonder if you have interfaced with the Baltimore Orchard Project. They're a group that would come to Mondawmin to look at that orchard to make sure the fruit was actually harvested and would help you with that if you're interested. I know those folks.
Oh, well, that's great. I do know about the Baltimore Orchard Project. I know Jeannie Howe has been involved in that for a long time. So that's good to know. I can consider passing that on.
Hi.
Hi.
I don't know how to. So, did you feel like during that walk that the idea of flipping the script of challenging the perspective, so to speak, didn't really occur to you until Adeline suggested it towards the end when she grabbed your hand?
No, I think I was honestly, I think I was mostly just hot. And I was just like, it was just, look, we go all over the city, and we are not we don't specialize in wealthy neighborhoods. It's not like we're hanging out in affluent communities, but typically when we're in a community for a Final Friday, it's pretty easy to photograph, So I think I was mostly just, struck by the challenge of representing what she was telling us with the images that we were collecting. But no, I mean, I will say, after this particular Final Friday, we had a whole staff debrief because it was, really intense, and it was something that I wanted us all to talk about. This is just a community, like so many communities in Baltimore, that people have left behind.
Right. Yeah, I guess.
And it was just when she said, it was just that line. She just said, I just believe that someone would want this. And she's saying that about a community that has so clearly been left behind. And it just reminded me, we have a really important job, because we are responsible for making sure that people want our communities and that they are not communities that are left behind. So I don't know. I guess that's what that said to me. It was just a line that has just echoed in my head and played in the hardest days that I've had, that we are responsible for making sure that people want this.
I guess the question that I have is, I'm interested in the ways that you allocate resources and funding to really support these people. I think telling stories is a beautiful thing, but I think when we talk about nonprofits and we talk about liberatory work, it looks like changing stories. So what are the ways that you all are approaching that work?
I don't know how to answer that question. I mean, I think we try to be obviously we're a marketing organization. We're promoting the city, right? So we're gonna tell positive stories. I don't think it helps communities to tell negative stories. So we tell positive stories, and I think we try and do that with as much authenticity as possible to the voices of those communities. So I guess I don't. We are a marketing organization. Our role is storytelling. So we're not responsible for some of the other community development work that other nonprofits are engaged in. I'm sure I didn't answer your question, but we could talk afterwards.
Nice mic. Really quickly, have you spoken with Miss Adelaide since 2019 and maybe have seen any of the changes that she was looking forward to?
Yeah, well, so that is a great question. She continues to be a very involved person in her community, and we have been closely following all of the great development work that's happening in Mondawmin. The Target had been closed back in 2019. Now there is a new effort to bring back some of the commercial spaces at Mondawmin Mall, and she's very engaged in that and very excited about that. We received some grant funding to do grants for, again, I mentioned our Buy Back the Block program. So grants to support renters who are already living in communities in purchasing homes in those communities. And so we are really excited that Mondawmin is one of 5 of the areas where people are eligible for those grants. So we've been working with her and some of her neighbors to get the word out about the opportunity for residents of Mondawmin to get $10,000 or $20,000 toward the purchase of a home in the neighborhood. And we hope that that will help to address some of the vacancy and also to do some home repairs that we know are needed on some of the properties.
So Baltimoreans, I think, pretty fiercely defend the city.
Yeah.
So what are the special, unique, and universal things you see in all of these neighborhoods that make city life great?
Oh, well, I mean, everybody always says, the people, right? But it really is. I mean, there are just passionate neighbors in every single community. And in every single community, there are assets, and people are eager and excited to tell you about what the community assets are, whether that's a business, whether it's architecture, or whether it's just the neighbors, because there's some communities that are just residential, and it's just the neighbors. So I think universally we have passionate people in every neighborhood that want to tell you why their neighborhood is the best place for people to live in the city. And they all want neighbors who care about the community. So I would say that's probably the most universal thing.
All right, we could take one more probably. We're super short on time. Does anybody else have anything? You got real high up, no? All right, well, I have a quick question. How
Yes.
can we in general support Live Baltimore's mission?
We are always looking for volunteers. Like I said, we craft experiences so that people can get out into neighborhoods like we do. And so we're always looking for volunteers, especially at our neighborhood tour events, which are our trolley tour events. So if you would like to get people excited about moving to Baltimore, please come to one of our events and serve as a volunteer. I said if you would like to host us for a Final Friday, we will. I don't wear this for Final Friday. We will show up and we'll have breakfast. We'll bring you breakfast, and you can tell us about your community. And then lastly, I would say we do this really wonderful thing every summer. We throw the city a birthday party, and it's just a really wonderful opportunity to just throw some love on the city and to celebrate the city and all of its people. So if you are so inclined, come and join us the last Friday in July, the final Friday in July, and be a guest at Baltimore's Birthday Bash. We would love to have you.
All right, thank you so much, Annie. Everybody give Annie a round of applause. Thank you.